Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Thursday night Anamkara meditation program. With all my heart, with all my love, I welcome you to our program tonight. So delighted you were able to join us for this evening's program. And, we're heading into Thanksgiving next week. So we'll be talking a bit about gratitude and that as a practice. And one of the things we've been doing to start out with to just help quiet the mind, just invite it into the sacred space of just stillness and silence, leaving behind all the clutter of thoughts and everything that can absorb our attention so much of the time. And what we're doing is just coming back to a practice of resting on the breath. And it said that this ancient mantra, eternal mantra really, of the sound of the breath, that this breath comes in with the sound ah, silently, and goes out with the sound hum. Again, just silently. And so as we listen and feel the breath, it's almost like we're imagining hearing the ah as the breath comes in and the hum as the breath goes out. And that ancient mantra, it's actually a Sanskrit mantra, simply means I am. I am. Aham. Right? And it's invoking the awareness of that pure sense of being. The sense of being that's unbounded by all the things we usually identify with throughout our day, our roles, the things that we're doing, the things going through the mind, letting that all go and just coming to rest in I am. So it's almost like everything that comes after I am that typically occupies the mind. I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm tall, I'm short, I'm this and that. We set all that aside and just come to rest in being. I am. Well, that foundational awareness of being is also the awareness of the infinite. The infinite presence of being is the ground of even our little experience of being. So when we can quiet the mind and step back from that, we can become more and more familiar with that boundlessness of being and all that goes with it, the wisdom, the love, the compassion. There's the presence of being. So that's what we're going to do right now. And very simply, we're going to be using the harmonium to help guide the breath, to slow and deepen. So the breath comes in. And then goes out. Inhalation. Exhalation. Silently listening for the ah, hum. Ah on the inhalation, hum on the exhalation. And then just continue to breathe, but also continuing that awareness, aham awareness. It's always there in the background, the awareness of simply being. The mind leaps forward and becomes this thought, this feeling, this reaction, engaged with this memory, this anticipation of something later or tomorrow. That's the mind leaping at these things. That's what the yogis have talked about, that aspect of mind that we've been talking about in the last few weeks about practices, the ahamkara, the little I maker. It makes a little I out of all these different things. But when we let go of them, we can get in touch with the foundational I, the pure I awareness. What in the Shaivite tradition is called the rapturous I awareness of infinite being. That's the root of who we are. That's what meditation leads us into, knowing more and more profoundly, more and more deeply, and more at any time, in any place. So that's what our practices are aimed at. And we've also been talking about, how yogis and the practices that we're doing are practices that are also meant to both open that state of that boundless nature of being. That's the state of meditation that we've talked about. But also that the practices help to stabilize the mind, to quiet the mind, to actually get rid of some of the old conditioned patterns of mind that don't serve us in everyday life, that cause, various kinds of agitation, conflict, whatever. So these practices are both working on the level of the conditioned mind, even while opening up the infinitude of being. And of course, that experience begins to really dissolve more and more, even the knots of the mind. So that's why the practices are aimed at all these different levels and work together like that. Now, interestingly, one of the practices that has to do with how do we sustain a good state, because that's another thing about doing sadhana, doing spiritual practices over time. It becomes clear that the state that we're in, well, that's the state from which we're going to create. That's the state in which we're going to act and react to people. So we want that state to be as lofty and clear as we can make it. So a seeker, a practitioner, a yogi really starts to pay more and more attention to what's their state moment by moment and what's impacting that, what's influencing that, what helps to uplift that. The use of mantra is one of the fundamental practices. That's why the word mantra, meaning that which protects, well, what's it protecting us against? Negative states that come with identification with limitations with the ordinary mind. So taking refuge in mantra is a sustained practice as much as possible throughout the day. And we'll be doing chant and meditation later, making use of the power of mantra. But there's also practices that help, that are sort of seen as medicine for contracted states. And one of the things that the ancient yogis saw was that the practice of gratitude changes our state. And so, yes, we're coming up to Thanksgiving and a time when that gets more attention and focus, but it's a practice for every day. It's a practice that is going to help buoy our state moment by moment. And that wasn't just the ancient yogis and the ancient Buddhists talking about it as a medicine for the state of mind. Uh, Interestingly, there's been more and more research in the field of psychology and neurophysiology looking at what happens when we shift states in meditation, but also when we shift attitudinal states. So, like with the cultivation of gratitude, well, it turns out that, well, we don't need research to tell us that feels good. That's obvious. If we're in a state of feeling that kind of gratitude and sort of the fullness that goes with that, that's immediately apparent. But the research that's been done on looking at that is showing that that's not just an imagination that, oh, it feels good. There are shifts that are going on in the brain as well, in our neurophysiology. That when we're cultivating gratitude, there are reward centers and circuits in the brain that light up. It changes the hippocampus that has to do with emotional reactivity and pleasure. Right? These things are shifted into a more pleasurable state because we're cultivating that. So the cultivation is the use of attention and consciousness, and it's impacting the physiology of our brain. So that's how potent it is. It just actually is changing the neurophysiology in our brain when we're doing this. So if feeling good wasn't enough of reasons for doing that, it's good for your brain as well. Right? And so those kinds of shifts in consciousness are reflected in the mirror of the mind and brain. So we do these kinds of practices and focus in on gratitude and see that both the immediately felt effects of that, as well as knowing that over time, it's changing those circuits. Because the more we practice, well, practice is also reflected in neurophysiological changes. The circuits that we're using become stronger. So the circuit that has to do with the pleasure, the reward, the good feeling around gratitude, it becomes stronger. In the same way that when we're using the focused attention, whether it's just focusing on the breath or focusing on mantra while we're sitting in meditation or sitting and chanting, that focused attention is using certain circuitry in the brain that has been shown that it too is boosted, even thickens the cortex in areas of the brain having to do with attention. So these seemingly subtle practices, subtle meaning, oh, their feelings and attitude and awareness and consciousness, well, they're having profound effects both on the immediate experience we're having, but also on what's going on with the brain. And in that sense, preparing the brain to more easily access even its ability to know that, to feel that, to experience that, to live that into the world. Because that's ultimately what all the practices are about, is both knowing that and living it into the world. And so they're empowering us in these ways. So gratitude, cultivating that awareness of what in our lives helps us to feel that on a day-to-day basis. What happens when we wake up in the morning and have a practice of gratitude? What if that's the first thing, rather than, oh, I can't believe it's another day, whatever the mind might do, or it's to-do list, oh, I got to get ready. What if it just, even just for 30 seconds, a minute, said, oh, I'm grateful, and has some of those things that just come to mind that it's grateful for. That's going to change our brain. That's going to change our day. It's going to change how we enter the day. So gratitude, a tremendous practice. And so I wanted to share tonight a poem, and it's from Oh My Beloved. And in keeping with gratitude, in keeping with this season. And so this is a poem that's called A Grateful Heart. And you can sort of take it as almost like a guided meditation. So you're welcome to kind of sit back and just listen. Allow your awareness to just flow along with that and see what's invoked as you listen. A grateful heart. Oh, my beloved, I awoke today, buoyed by ocean swells of gratitude for your countless gifts and your sublime grace, which you bestow with such wild abandon. Your inexhaustible generosity humbles all who know you. My beloved, I'm grateful for this human form you created and endowed with a mind, heart, and 5 senses by which we delight in your living presence, dancing the dance of creation. My beloved, I'm ever grateful for this loving heart of compassion. Your heart now beats in my chest. My most treasured gift, my dearest, is the deep knowing suffused with such indescribable adoration that reveals your graceful presence in every moment, every being, and every atom of existence. Surely you knew I would die if ignorance ever separated me from you again. My beloved Tarama, at times I weep in rapture, brought on by your numinous, all-embracing consciousness, flowing through this heart and mind, body and soul. Now your heart, mind, body, and soul, feeling your seeking, ever seeking, to relieve the suffering of all beings throughout the universe. Your loving compassion heals all pain and sorrow. May everyone find refuge in you. My beloved Devi, who can express the overwhelming gratitude that arises while seeing you take every form needed to nourish all beings in all times, in all places? You've become the earth to give us a home and shelter. You've become food to satisfy our hunger. You've become drink to slake our thirst. You've become friends and family and loved ones to support and guide us. You've become strangers and enemies to challenge us to expand our hearts. Oh, my beloved, what won't you become to ease our way home to you? Grant me the clarity of mind and the purity of heart to fully appreciate all you become out of pure love for every creature in your creation. My dearest beloved, time will never diminish my gratitude for your revelation that nothing exists outside of your loving field of consciousness. Within that boundless expanse, everything, from galaxies to fleeting thoughts, arises and subsides. No mind can know the glorious mystery of your loving power expressing itself by creating all, sustaining all, dissolving all, while never breaking your sweet union with all. By your gift of grace, we awaken. The illusion of separation dissolves, and with it, the ordinary mind. All that remains is loving you, beholding you as our own sublime self, the self of all, the divine within all, everywhere the one, whose nature is pure, all-inclusive love. Nothing could ever exist outside of your divine embrace. You want everyone to know the unbreakable union that brings an end to all suffering. Seeker, live true to your boundless loving nature, for your nature is her nature. Om Taré Tuttaré Soha. Gratitude. Gratitude. It opens the heart to the abundance of that living presence. It's love, it's grace, it's healing power, it's profound compassion. Anytime, any place, And the beloved takes so many forms. Tara, Kuan Yin, Mother Mary, Kali. We can call on her. Holy Spirit, Shekinah. She'll wear any face that we want. And draw us in this space where the faceless one is present. And that living presence is invoked in the ancient mantra of the Tibetan Buddhist tradition of green taro. Om Taré Tuttaré Turé Soha. Om Taré Tuttaré Turé Soha. An invocation of the Divine Mother, the form of Tara, the one whose compassion is so full and present. She's always ready to leap forward to relieve the suffering of all beings. She hears the cries of the suffering of all beings. Om Taré Tuttaré Turé Soha. So we're going to be chanting that for a few minutes. And then at the end of the chant, we're just going to be sitting in the stillness, in the silence, just resting your awareness on the breath. You can come back to the aham, or you might continue the chant of the Om Taré Tuttaré Turé Soha, going in the mind, invited into the stillness, into the silence, the language of love, silence. The language of the divine embrace is that silence, that stillness, that spaciousness of being, right here, right now, fully present. So we'll be chanting now. Om Taré Tuttaré Turé Soha. 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 Taré Tuttaré Soha. Om Taré Tuttaré Turé 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 Soha. So in that stillness and spaciousness, the living presence, that loving, compassionate one, the essence of who you are. And letting go of this thought or that thought. The rest and flow of the breath. The spaciousness of awareness that just watches the breath coming in and going out, watches the mind coming back to mantra. That awareness watches the most sublime love, compassion, wisdom, and joy. Rest there. Rest in the truth of who you are. Taré Tuttaré Turé Soha. I'm going to close with this simple chant, invoking the Mother. The Mother is Kali. Om Kali Ma. Kali Namo Nama. 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 Shri Mata Kali Mahadevi Ki Jai. So we end with this prayer. May all our practices truly benefit everyone, and may all beings know complete freedom from suffering. Namaste. So the practices, they empower us to change our state, whether it's the practice of mantra, or the practice of remembrance, the practice of just noticing the stillness. All movement arises out of stillness, dissolves into stillness. All sound arises out of stillness, dissolves into stillness. Thoughts arise out of stillness, dissolve into stillness. Keep entering that stillness. That's where we come to know the mystery of what lies beyond the mind. What's the source of boundless gratitude, boundless compassion, boundless wisdom, boundless love, boundless rapturous joy. It's the essence of being the truth of who you are. So we keep coming back to that. So I want to thank you for joining us this evening and being ones who do the practices, to walk that wisdom, that knowing into the world, into your everyday lives. At a time when the world so desperately needs wisdom. So thank you for being ones who carry that. And so thank you for joining us, and thank you for the many ways you support Anam Cara, sharing our e-newsletter, telling people about our Thursday night programs or other programs. So thank you for passing on that to everyone you can. That's our seva, just trying to make what we can available to as many as we can. So we'll be meeting again in 2 weeks. I look forward to seeing you then. So with all my heart, with all my love, I thank you for coming this evening.